Hi friends, welcome to this week's video. Today I'm going to share with you two different ways to make upma, which is one of my favorite breakfasts. I'm going to be sharing one upma which is packed with tomatoey flavor. It's a little bit stickier and gooey. It happens to be vegan. And then a second upma which is a fluffier, nutty vegetarian upma. I should probably say that upma or uppama, depending on how you pronounce it, can be made from a variety of different things. It can be made from millet, sooji, savian, sabudana, barley. I could go on, but today's recipes are going to use rava, which is also called sooji. It's really similar to cream of wheat. I'm also going to give you all the tips so that you can make the perfect upma every single time. Now, the first tip is to roast the rava or sooji. Do this in a non-stick pan over medium heat. Just move it around constantly so it doesn't burn. And then once it's achieved a sort of nutty aroma, then it's toasted and you can put it aside. So for this upma, which is the vegan upma, I'm adding some whole spices like cumin, mustard seeds, coriander seeds, just in some hot oil over medium-high heat. I have the hing and curry leaves as well. And I'm just moving those around a little bit before adding in some green chili, which is always optional. After that comes some finely chopped red onion, as well as the white part of spring onion. Then simply combine those ingredients and allow them to cook down a bit until the onion just becomes a little translucent. Next is a bit of tomato, followed by some salt. Combine that as well and cover it up for 1 minute. This version of upma is developed by me, kind of by accident. I never really used to like dal in my upma because I couldn't cook it properly, so I came up with this vegetable tomato upma that, after many years of tweaking, tasted really good, and it's one of my go-to recipes. Okay, next is a bit of chopped coriander and the green part of the spring onion. Typically, I would add the coriander at the end, but I'm adding it now. I kind of like the way it cooks down a little bit and wilts while this upma is just finishing up. I've added the rava, and next comes the water, and because this recipe is a gooier, more porridgey texture, I'm using a 1:3 ratio, so 1 part rava to 3 parts water, and this is the texture that I really like for this version of upma. So turn off the heat, but leave it covered and on the stove. And then after about 3 or 5 minutes, this is what you will have. A really soft, sticky, kind of gooey texture of upma that I really like. And some restaurants actually serve it this way. I'm adding a little extra salt plus some lime juice and incorporating that just to kind of balance the flavors a little bit after giving it a taste test, of course. And then to present the upma really nicely, I like to put it into a ramekin or a katori and then invert it onto a plate. I think it just gives it a really nice look. I did have some difficulty with this, so I ran a knife along the inside edge of the ramekin and that helped to dislodge it. It didn't dislodge in the center, which kind of bothered me. I did try to jiggle it over, but it just wouldn't move, so I threw on the garnish, and then I wish I had some chutney right there, but I didn't have any chutney either. That's okay. So here is upma number 1. This is the vegan upma. It has a really nice tomatoey flavor. You can see that it's really soft and gooey. Look at the steam just coming right out of that. It has a very porridge-like consistency, but not a goopy porridge. It's got nice chunks of the veggies that you can actually identify when you look at it. And it's just packed with the flavor of those whole spices. It's such a comforting breakfast. I love to have upma in the mornings, especially on a cool or rainy morning. All right, moving on to upma number 2. This is the vegetarian upma. I'm starting out by roasting my rava, and I'm going to get back to that in a second, but here I have some urad and chana dal that is soaking. It's not soaking forever, it's just soaking while I do the prep. Something that I figured out about using dal in upma, in Canada at least, our dal is really hard, so even if you just soak it for a few minutes, it does help. Now, I am roasting here my rava as well as some cumin, some jeera. The rava is going to darken in color and the jeera is going to have a nice roasted aroma. You'll know by the smell when it's done. Just put that aside, we will deal with it a little later. Let's add some oil to a non-stick pan over medium-high heat, and to that we're adding some mustard seeds as well as the dals which have been washed out and strained, also about 10 to 12 cashews. We're going to keep this moving around on the medium-high heat so that things develop some color but don't burn. Next comes a bit of green chili, which is always optional, followed by some very finely minced ginger and the curry leaves. If you have fresh curry leaves, by the way, those are preferable. Of course, I have dried curry leaves. I also added some hing or some asafoetida, and now we're going to add the water. We're not going to add the rava just yet. We're adding water, and this is going to be a fluffier upma, so we're adding a little bit less water. We have a 1 to 2.5 ratio. The half is actually some milk, and you can use plant milk if you want. This is going to give your upma a really luxurious flavor. And I'm doing it this way so that the milk and water are really nicely combined, as opposed to adding the rava first and then adding my liquids. I'm also going to add a bit of salt right now, just so that the upma is evenly salted. Just making sure that that is nicely dissolved in the milk and water. And here comes the rava, which I am whisking in while I'm adding a little bit at a time and whisking, just to make sure that it's not clumpy. And once all of the rava is added, we are going to cover this up and let it cook for about 3 to 5 minutes with the heat off, but still on the stove. And after those 3 to 5 minutes, this is what we have. We're gonna add a little bit of freshly chopped coriander. We're gonna balance with a bit of lime juice, and we're gonna add some ghee, which of course is optional. If you wanted to make this vegan, as I mentioned, you could use the plant milk earlier on, and you could add your favorite vegan butter right here. This is a very easily adaptable recipe. So I'm just combining the ghee, and I'm going to give you a look at the final texture of this upma. I've plated it in much the same way. It is fluffier. Look at that dal just fall right out of there. It doesn't really hold its shape as well as the previous upma because this is a much fluffier and lighter texture. It breaks up very easily. As you can see, it's quite crumbly. I do very much enjoy the flavor of this upma as well. I haven't been making it as long as the previous recipe. Look at that cashew, so lovely. I haven't been making it as long as I have the other recipe, but this to me is very reminiscent of upma that I've eaten in Bangalore, that I've eaten in other parts of India in the south. It just seems a bit more, I mean, honestly, it's much more authentic than the upma that I invented. Alright, so I hope that you enjoyed this video. You have two very different ways to make upma, similar techniques, but a few little differences here and there that you can try out. You could make the vegetarian upma using the technique of the vegan upma or vice versa, depending on how you like your upma. Honestly, I like both ways, but let me know in the comments down below how you like your upma, if this is something that you have eaten before, that you are accustomed to eating. And if you've never tried this, let me know what you think. Semolina for breakfast. It's delicious, honestly, if you haven't tried it. Okay, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week. Bye, friends.